What do you think you can do for our company besides your accent? The words hung in the air, sharp and cold, cutting through the sterile silence of the office. They were a question, but they were also a verdict. A man with decades of experience, 2 advanced degrees, and a heart full of hope was being judged not on his resume, but on the way he sounded and the color of his skin. The person asking the question was Mr. Harrison, a white man who was looking at him with a mix of disdain and disgust. But what he didn't know was that this man's talent and resilience were about to turn his entire world upside down. If you believe that a person should be judged on their character and skills, not their background, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you stand against prejudice, type yes in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Now, to truly understand this moment, we have to go back to the beginning. The early morning sun slanted through the tall glass windows of the lobby, but the office felt cold. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and anxiety. For months, Daniel had been on a brutal job hunt. In his home country of Nigeria, he had been a CEO in the electrical engineering industry, a brilliant mind who had helped build a company from the ground up. But here, in this new city, his resume and his degrees seemed to mean nothing. All that mattered was the polite, well-spoken accent that gave him away. He had been to 4 interviews already, and each one had ended the same way, with a polite smile and a firm handshake, followed by a silence that spoke louder than any words. This was his 5th chance. He held his file tight, the papers a physical weight of his hopes and dreams. He stood in front of the door with the name Mr. Harrison engraved on it. He took a deep breath, straightened his jacket, and knocked once. He heard a muffled voice from inside. He knocked again, a bit louder this time. The voice from inside, a casual one, said yes. Daniel opened the door just enough to peek his head in, his face lighting up with a polite smile. "May I come in, sir?" The man inside Mr. Harrison was a middle-aged white man in a sharp suit. He didn't look up from his computer. Casually, he waved a hand towards a table in the corner. "Yes. Oh, you must be the delivery guy. Leave it on the table." Daniel's smile faded. He stepped into the room, his file still clutched in his hand. The words delivery guy felt like a punch to the gut, but he didn't let it show. He had to stay calm. In a voice filled with surprise, he said, "No, sir. I'm here for an interview." Mr. Harrison finally looked up, his casual manner gone. He stared at Daniel, his eyes sweeping over his dark skin and his obvious African features, his gaze lingering for just a moment too long. "You," he said, the single word dripping with disbelief. He looked away, muttering to himself, but loud enough for Daniel to hear, "Is this some kind of joke?" Daniel's heart sank, but he maintained his composure. This was the moment to prove him wrong. "No, sir. I have an appointment." And that's when Mr. Harrison said it, leaning back in his chair, his eyes narrow and his voice sharp. "What do you think you can do for our company besides your accent?" That question hit hard. Daniel felt a cold anger rise in him, but he pushed it down. He had bills to pay. His landlord had already threatened to kick him out. He couldn't afford to be angry. He had to be calm. He had to be professional. "I have 2 degrees, sir," Daniel said, his voice firm and steady. "And back in my country, I used to be a CEO in the industry." Mr. Harrison's smirk widened. He looked Daniel up and down, then gestured to the chair in front of his desk. "Yeah, this won't take long." Daniel walked over and sat down, his shoulders squared, his gaze never leaving Mr. Harrison's face. He handed over his file, a thick portfolio of his accomplishments, projects, and glowing recommendations. He leaned forward, his voice filled with a desperate hope. "This is my dream job, sir, and if you give me a chance—" But Mr. Harrison cut him off sharply. He didn't even open the file. He barely glanced at the cover page before pushing it back across the desk. "Janitor," he said firmly. Daniel froze. The word echoed in the sudden silence. In his mind, he had heard every possible rejection, but never this. "What?" he asked, his voice as a disbelieving whisper. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, a cruel smile on his face. "We have an opening for a janitor. You can start tomorrow." Daniel couldn't believe his ears. The man didn't even look at his qualifications. He didn't ask a single question about his experience. The entire interview had been about one thing: his race. Still in shock, Daniel could only stammer, "But that's not what I'm here for." "Look," Mr. Harrison said, his voice cutting him off again. filled with a finality that crushed Daniel's last bit of hope. Do you want this job or not? Because if you don't let the door smack you on your way out. That was it. There was no other choice. This was the fifth company that had rejected him. He had no other choice than to take the janitor work. It was better than nothing, and he had bills to pay. His landlord had already told him he had to pay soon or be out on the street. The next day, Daniel showed up to work in a company uniform, a mop and bucket in his hand. Mr. Harrison was still hell-bent on making his stay at the company as uncomfortable as possible. He called Daniel into his office, a wide, smug smile on his face. "Hey, you! The janitor!" he called out. "Come here. I spilled coffee on my table. Clean it up immediately." Daniel simply said, "Okay," and began wiping the table. As he was doing that, he overheard Mr. Harrison and a few other executives speaking about a project that needed to be a game changer and something very remarkable to save the company from going under. Later that day, Daniel approached Mr. Harrison's office. He took a deep breath and knocked. When Mr. Harrison looked up, Daniel said politely, "I heard what you were talking about at the meeting." Mr. Harrison's expression was one of confusion, followed by annoyance. So? Is it possible?" Daniel said, his voice hesitant but hopeful. "I mean, can I offer my project, please?" Mr. Harrison laughed, a loud, fake sound that made the other executives turn their heads. "You?" he roared, and then went on to add, "What do you know about it?" Daniel stood up straight, his gaze firm. "I hold a master's degree in electrical engineering, sir. I know this subject thoroughly, inside and out." Mr. Harrison's sarcastic smile returned. "Of course you do," he said, and then, as a joke to his colleagues, he said, "Yeah, you can do it." Then he went on to say, "Just don't forget, the deadline's tomorrow. You might have to stay up all night to do the work, but hey, go ahead, knock yourself out." A wave of relief and happiness washed over Daniel. He didn't see the cruelty in the joke. He only saw an opportunity. "Thank you so much, sir," he said, a genuine smile on his face. As Daniel left the office, Mr. Harrison muttered to himself, "What an idiot." Back at his small, cramped apartment, Daniel worked all night. He pulled out his laptop and his old notebooks, his mind racing with ideas. He was exhausted, but he was driven by the hope that if they saw what he could actually do, they would give him a promotion. He worked until the sun came up, even sleeping for a few minutes with his head on his desk before waking up with a jolt. The next day, Mr. Harrison was still trying to make Daniel's work even more difficult. He went into the restroom, purposely left the tap running, smiled to himself, and left, imagining the flood Daniel would have to clean up. But Daniel was in his office with a stack of papers in his hand. He walked in, went straight to Mr. Harrison's desk, and handed him the file. As Mr. Harrison looked at it, visible disgust on his face, he said, "What's this?" "The project that I've been working on," Daniel said. "You said I could try." Mr. Harrison cut him off, his voice laced with annoyance. "Oh, yeah, okay. I guess I can take a look at it." He started to glance over the pages, a fake expression of interest on his face. "So what do you think?" Daniel asked, his heart in his throat. "It's very good." "Silly. You're talented," Mr. Harrison said with a sarcastic smile. "I'll show this to the boss, and I'm sure he'll appreciate it." "Thank you so much," Daniel said, his face lighting up. Later that day, as Daniel was cleaning Mr. Harrison's office, he saw his project inside the shredder, torn into 1,000 tiny pieces. In shock and disbelief, Daniel didn't give up. He painstakingly took the papers out, used the solid tape on the desk, and taped every single piece back together, putting it back in the desk inside a folder. The next day, the boss of the company came in expecting his project to be ready. Mr. Harrison walked in a bit late and said to his boss, "I'm sorry, I'm late, sir." "You'd better have something fantastic today," the boss said, his voice impatient. He suddenly noticed the project with solid tape on it and started to go through it, a look of shock spreading across his face. Mr. Harrison continued to talk, but the boss wasn't listening. His attention was on the work he was looking at. "I haven't had time to do all of the project yet," Mr. Harrison was saying, "but I'm sure this is going to break the bank. I estimate that." The boss cut him off, his voice sharp. "Who did this?" he asked, referring to the taped-up paperwork. Mr. Harrison didn't reply fast enough, so the boss said again, "I'm asking you one more time. Who did this?" Finally, Mr. Harrison stammered, Yeah, that was our janitor. I told him immediately it was terrible, but I guess he slipped it back into the files when I wasn't looking. Get him here now, the boss said sharply. Yes, Mr. Harrison said immediately, rushing out to find Daniel. He was going to be final, thinking he was going to be fired. Minutes later, he came back with Daniel. Here he is, boss. The boss looked at Daniel and asked, Did you do this project? Yes, sir, Daniel said. There was a pause. Then the boss stood up and walked to him. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. This is brilliant, he said. Everybody was shocked by what the boss had just said, especially Mr. Harrison. The boss went on to say to Daniel, You're a genius. Thank you, sir, Daniel said, a tear welling up in his eye. The boss then said, I want you to make this project happen. Mr. Harrison cut in, But boss, I'm the supervisor of this project. The boss turned to him, his voice cold. You failed to see this man's talent because of your blind prejudice. Your narrow-mindedness nearly jeopardized the future of our company and almost cost us a brilliant employee. All I hear from you are excuses. Meanwhile, he's accomplished this in less than a week. You're nothing but dead weight. Then the boss looked at him and said, You're fired. In shock and speechlessness, Mr. Blockcraft Harrison stammered, What? What do you mean? The boss removed Daniel's janitor cap and the towel on his hand and gave them to Mr. Harrison. We have a vacancy, he said, and then turned to Daniel, a warm smile on his face. Welcome on board. Thank you so much, Daniel said, his heart full of a feeling he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. If this story resonated with you and you believe that everyone deserves a chance to show their true worth, go ahead and give this a like and subscribe. And if you have a story of your own, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.